There was something soul-crushing about cleaning up after people who never even looked you in the eye. Tonight, as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the city skyline glittered behind the towering glass windows, Maria's hands trembled around the mop handle. Her knees ached from hours of scrubbing coffee stains off floors that would be dirty again by morning, and her eyes burned from holding back the tears she swore she'd never let fall at work again. She had no idea that tonight, alone, exhausted, and invisible in a room made for power and prestige, she would be seen, not by a colleague, not by a manager, but by the new guy who offered to help her mop the floor. And she couldn't have imagined that the man in rolled-up sleeves and quiet eyes would turn out to be the CEO of the entire company. Heartbreak before you go any further. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected connections, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Stories Collection for more real, powerful stories. Heartbreak. Maria Gonzalez wasn't born into a life of silver spoons or safety nets. Her childhood was painted in the colors of hardship, a hard-working mother who passed away too soon, a younger brother she'd raised herself, and dreams she had packed away neatly in a box labeled, someday. At 42, someday still hadn't come. She worked nights as a janitor for one of the tallest corporate towers in the city, the kind of place where men wore $1,000 suits and women walked in heels sharp enough to pierce clouds. Maria, in her thrift store sneakers and faded uniform, was more ghost than person in these halls of ambition. But she never complained, never let the world know when her hands bled from cleaning chemicals or when her lunch was a half-eaten sandwich from the office fridge that someone had thrown away. She smiled when no one looked, prayed in the empty elevator, and believed, deep down, that hard work still mattered. The boardroom was always the last place she cleaned. It made her feel the furthest from her old dreams. The polished mahogany table, the velvet-lined chairs, the gigantic touchscreen monitor that looked more like a wall from a spaceship, all of it reminded her of who she might have been, had life been fair. Tonight, she was wiping down the whiteboard, scrubbing off the final streaks of dry erase ink that someone had left behind. The marker smeared into her rag, and she sighed as the cleaning spray ran out with a weak hiss. Behind her, the door creaked open. She turned, startled, and saw him. A man, late 30s, maybe early 40s, with rolled-up sleeves, hair still damp from the rain, and a calm, unreadable expression. She tensed, her body going into invisible mode, the one every janitor learned. Avoid eye contact, don't disturb them, just keep cleaning. But he didn't walk past. He looked at her, really looked. Then he walked straight over to the cleaning cart, picked up the spare mop, and said, "Looks like you could use a hand." She froze. Her first instinct was panic. Was this a trap? A joke? But his tone wasn't mocking. It was soft, genuine. Without waiting for permission, he dipped the mop into the bucket and began cleaning the opposite side of the boardroom. Maria wanted to protest, to tell him he didn't have to, that he wasn't supposed to, but something in his quiet presence stopped her. They mopped in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the swish of wet fibers against tile and the occasional patter of rain against the window. Her chest tightened. No one had helped her like this in years. No one had ever stepped into her world like this man just had. "I'm new here," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "First day. Figured I'd stay late and get a feel for the place." She glanced at him, unsure what to say. "Most people don't come to the boardroom to do that," she muttered, half smiling. "Most people don't notice what needs to be cleaned," he replied, meeting her eyes with a calm warmth. "But I do." That night, they cleaned side by side for nearly an hour. He didn't ask her name, and she didn't ask his. It felt too sacred to break the moment with titles or introductions. When they were done, the room gleamed. Maria gathered her supplies, thanked him quietly, and left the building with a strange flutter in her heart. The next morning, the building buzzed with news. The company had a new CEO, an entrepreneur known for saving failing businesses and turning them into socially conscious powerhouses. His name, Elijah Hart. Maria stopped in her tracks when she saw his face on the morning newsletter. It was him, the man with the mop. The man who cleaned the boardroom with her as if he were just another person, not someone who sat in the highest office in the building. The following weeks brought more surprises. Elijah introduced sweeping changes, better wages for all support staff, including janitors. Free meals during night shifts. Health benefits for part-timers. And, once a week, he made a point to walk the halls during night shifts, speaking with people, learning their names, asking about their families. The staff called him, the floor CEO, behind his back. He didn't mind. But Maria, she stayed quiet. She kept her head down, doing her job. Every time Elijah passed her in the hall, he nodded, sometimes with a warm smile, sometimes with a casual, good evening. But he never let on that he remembered that night. And she never brought it up. It was months later, during the annual company banquet, that Maria's name was called unexpectedly. She was in the back, clearing trays when the announcer said, "This year, our Founders Heart Award goes to someone who represents the very soul of what we want our company to be. A woman who works without recognition, who brings pride to the most thankless of jobs, who reminds us that dignity isn't tied to title, but to character." People turned as Elijah stepped forward, microphone in hand. And then, softly but firmly, he said, "Maria Gonzalez. Will you please come up?" The applause thundered as Maria stared, wide-eyed and trembling. Her heart pounded as she walked to the stage, unsure what was happening. When she stood beside him, he leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for letting me help. That night changed me more than you'll ever know." He handed her a plaque, and when she turned it over, a folded note fell into her hand. Later, when she opened it, she read, "Sometimes the best way to lead is to listen. Sometimes the best way to be seen is to see someone else first. Thank you for reminding me what matters." Maria cried that night, not from exhaustion, not from despair, but from a kind of hope she hadn't felt in decades. Elijah never flaunted what he'd done. He never told anyone about the night they'd cleaned together. But the company changed, the culture changed, and people started noticing the invisible ones, the janitors, the receptionists, the cafeteria workers. Kindness spread like wildfire. It wasn't just about profits anymore. It was about people. Maria kept cleaning. But now, when she walked the halls, people greeted her by name. Some offered coffee. Others stopped to chat. She still wore the same uniform. Still brought her lunch in a paper bag. But her heart felt lighter. Seen. Respected. Years later, when she finally retired, Elijah came to her farewell. Not as a CEO. But as a friend. They hugged like old comrades, bound not by titles, but by that single, rain-soaked night when two mops met in silence, and something beautiful began. Droplet, if this story touched your heart, even just a little, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection to support stories that remind us of what truly matters in this world. Share it with someone who needs a little light today. Droplet. Speech balloon special request. Comment below with one act of kindness someone did for you that you'll never forget. We'd love to hear your story. Absolutely. Here's a continuation and deeper expansion of the story to bring it closer to the full, emotional experience suitable for an 8,000-word video. We'll continue with the same cinematic, heart-driven tone, building on Maria and Elijah's evolving story and its ripple effects. After that unforgettable night in the boardroom and the heart-stirring award ceremony, Maria's life didn't just shift, it bloomed. But not in the way fairy tales often promise. There were no glass slippers or magic carriages. Instead, Maria found herself surrounded by something even more powerful, dignity restored. In the days following the award, she noticed subtle yet profound changes. The young marketing interns who once breezed past her now paused, smiled, and offered greetings. Executives who hadn't known her name now asked how her week was going. Even the building itself seemed to breathe differently, as though, for the first time, It realized the quiet strength of the hands that kept it clean, functional, and human. But Maria didn't let the attention change her. She arrived at the same time, walked the same route, and completed every task with the quiet excellence that had defined her for years. The only difference now was that she no longer felt invisible. Behind the scenes, Elijah Hart's transformation was just as personal. The board had been skeptical at first. CEOs weren't supposed to mop floors or serve food in the cafeteria once a month. They weren't supposed to know the names of janitors or sit cross-legged in the break room asking security guards about their dreams. But Elijah wasn't like most CEOs. He didn't become extraordinary that night, he simply returned to it. Long before the headlines and investor meetings, Elijah had grown up with a single mother too. His mom had worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on: housekeeper by day, waitress by night, cleaner on Sundays. He remembered falling asleep to the smell of lemon-scented bleach and the sight of her battered hands. When he helped Maria clean that boardroom, something old and sacred had awakened in him, a tether to who he truly was. Over the next year, the floor CEO became a quiet movement within the company. Inspired by Maria's story, Elijah implemented a mentorship program for janitorial staff and cafeteria workers, offering optional night courses, financial literacy sessions, even high school diploma assistance for those who had never completed their education. Maria didn't need those things herself, but she championed them. She volunteered after shifts, helping younger staff fill out forms, practice speaking confidently, and even dress for advancement interviews. One of them was a shy 22-year-old named Kamal, the son of immigrants who had struggled through high school and was working as a part-time cleaner to support his family. Maria took him under her wing, teaching him not just how to polish windows but how to believe in himself. With her encouragement and Elijah's new programs, Kamal enrolled in community college. 2 years later, he returned as a full-time employee in the logistics department, holding back tears as he thanked Maria in front of a packed auditorium. And still, Maria stayed grounded. She often told people, "I don't need a big title. I just need to make sure the people behind me feel seen." Then came the hardest winter the company had ever faced. A global recession, followed by a cybersecurity breach, sent profits spiraling. Layoffs loomed. Morale dropped. People whispered in elevators and cried in parking garages. Fear blanketed the building like a silent fog. Elijah faced enormous pressure from investors to make cuts, starting with support staff. But one night, when the decision weighed on him like chains, he found himself walking back to the boardroom. It was empty, quiet, but it still held the echo of mop strokes and the faint scent of disinfectant from long ago. Maria was there. She had stayed late again. They didn't speak for a while. She saw the storm in his eyes and simply said, "What you build with people's hearts, you don't throw away to save money. You save them first, and they'll save you back." Her words hit deeper than any report or board meeting ever could. Elijah called an emergency leadership meeting the next morning. He refused to lay off a single support staff member. Instead, he offered to cut his salary by 90% and freeze all executive bonuses. Several board members followed his lead. They opened a hardship fund, funded primarily by leadership contributions, that helped struggling employees through rent, food, and utilities. It became the lifeline that kept hundreds afloat. In the months that followed, the company's reputation soared, not for profits but for its soul. Media outlets picked up the story. Elijah and Maria were featured in a documentary about kindness in corporate culture. But neither of them basked in the attention. At home, Maria still took the bus. Still lived in the same modest apartment she shared with her now grown brother, who was thriving in trade school thanks to the scholarship program she'd quietly applied for on his behalf. Her life wasn't luxurious, but it was rich, in love, in respect, and in legacy. One afternoon, on her final week before retirement, Maria walked into the boardroom one last time. It was quiet again, polished, waiting. Elijah stood there, watching her enter. I'll miss these floors, she said softly, running her hand over the edge of the gleaming table. And they'll miss you, Elijah replied. He walked to her, pulling something from his coat pocket, a small velvet box. Inside was a gold pin, shaped like a mop crossed with a laurel wreath. Below it, the engraved words, "The one who saw." "I had this made," he said, his voice thick. "Because before I became the man I am today, I had to be seen by someone brave enough to see past my title." Maria's eyes filled. She nodded slowly, overwhelmed. "You were always that man. You just forgot." They stood there in silence, time moving slower, the past and present folding together like pages of a cherished book. Then Maria took the pin, placed it on her uniform, and smiled. Her last day ended not with applause or gifts, but with a standing ovation from the entire building staff as she walked out. Janitors, assistants, engineers, interns, and yes, even the executives. All standing, all clapping, for her. And at the very back of the crowd, Elijah stood with tears in his eyes, clapping the loudest. Glowing star, if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of someone who gave you a chance, showed you kindness, or helped you when no one else did, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support keeps stories like these alive. Glowing star. Speech balloon special request. In the comments, tell us, who was the Maria in your life? Or, were you someone else's Maria? We'd love to hear your story.